Coming to you entirely pre-recorded from the Garage of Solitude, I'm Mario Francisco Robles.
I'm Brett Miro. Pull up your super underoos and let's dance, because it's episode 159 of the Fanboy Podcast.
You are damn right it is. Brett, by the way, I just got to thank you. I want to just open up by thanking you for holding down the fort. I know I've been out for a few weeks dealing with some personal matters. I'm getting through all that day by day, week by week, minute by minute at times, but I'm getting through. But I want to thank you for holding down the fort here on the Fanboy, keeping the topics rolling, keeping the passionate analysis, doing the thing that you do so well, Brett. So I just want to thank you for keeping the Fanboy alive these last few weeks without me.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Sir.
And now I just want to know, what are you playing and watching this week?
Well, Mario, I'm glad you asked, because I don't know. No, I've actually I'm trying to think if I watched anything that I don't think anything on television really wowed me.
Yeah.
I actually watched Everything Everywhere All at Once again and made my fiance watch it this time.
Oh,
so I did
yeah.
talk about that on a previous episode.
I know.
But I watched it again, and it's just absolutely fucking incredible.
I gotta do it.
It really is.
That, and yeah,
It's something special. It's something very, very special, and it's executed amazingly. But as far as that, that's all I've been really watching. I've probably watched some other crap in between, but nothing to really talk about. And then on the gaming front, I have Mario Kart just launched 8 new courses.
That
wave 2 of the booster pass.
Nice.
So that just came out.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's excellent. Got some good favorites in. First of all, there's actually one entirely new course, which is cool. So they kind of like snuck one of those in there.
I didn't know they were going to be putting original courses in.
Yeah, so there's some original courses with the remixes, and then we got like N64 Calamari Desert, which is a great throwback. We got some I think Snowland from the GBA one. So we got another little ice level in there.
Dude, I'm booting that up as soon as we're done recording. You kidding me? Nice.
And they've been adding courses from the new Mario Kart Tour, which is like an iPhone game. But they've been adding some courses from that in here, and they all seem to be themed after like real life places. So they had like a little Tokyo level, I think, in the first wave, and there might have been another one. This level release has New York Minute, which takes place in like a fictional New York City. So kind of cool. And there's also, I think they added one from Australia, Sydney Sprint, which has a banger track to that course. Real jazzy, really cool. I was really into it while I was playing. I've noticed, I don't know if anyone else has, if the listeners want to chime in, if you played it, I feel like I've been playing Grand Prix on the 150 class on these new DLC like track waves, and they seem to be like a lot harder for me to get like a perfect first place on every race. Like I tried like several times today and like just kept getting screwed one way or another, like by like the third or fourth race after
that's
getting
me
first
every
place.
time I do 150.
I mean, that's Mario Kart, right, in general, but for some reason in these DLC waves, particularly worse. I don't know. So I wonder if anyone else feels that way, if they made it tougher or not. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing. What have you been up to?
Well, in terms of watching, it's been very, very little, because honestly, I've had like hardly any personal time to just sit and veg on the couch and watch anything lately. But in terms of playing, I have been able to sneak in a session or two more of Assassin's Creed Valhalla that I told you I got from the PlayStation Plus. And I even got to scratch the surface a little bit on Miles Morales. I still haven't, I was saving that originally for when I finally get my freaking PS5. Right. But now that PlayStation Plus is offering it for free, I'm like, how could I turn that down?
Right.
But I've checked it out. It's cool that like it's the same as playing the previous one. It's just, it's with some added coolness. But I was able to just like grab the controller out of my son's hands and like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, honestly, that's really kind of been it. I haven't had much time for gaming or watching. But you know what I have had time to do? I've had time to read the freaking movie news, and that's how I knew I have to end this hiatus, and we have to talk about the insanity happening over with Discovery and Warner Media and DC on film and Superman on film. So let's go ahead and kind of just dive right on into that, because this week, the Superman on film update is actually the same as the main central thesis for this episode, because now, as of a few days ago, it's been announced that DC has a brand new 10-year plan coming up. A
Yeah.
comprehensive 10-year plan has been announced by David Zaslav of just what do they call it now?
Warner Brothers
Warner,
Discovery.
yeah, Warner Brothers Discovery. And that's going to entail our boy Superman, because there's, we're going to get to the quotes in a little bit, but this seems to be the biggest, most pressing thing to discuss if we want to talk about Superman on film, because if we're talking about DC's entire cinematic future now actually having a coherent plan
Yeah.
with an intent to treat all of these characters with their proper respect and branch them outward and build them up in much the way that Disney and Marvel have done, over the last 20 years now. Well, 14 years now, I should say.
Sure.
Yeah, that's pretty groundbreaking. That's pretty huge stuff. So you know what? Let's go ahead and I want to read the quote that kind of gets all this started. Kind of the thing that got stated at some conference last week that's had fans the world over, well, DC fans the world over, talking, because depending on who you ask, this is like what we've been asking for. And for certain fans, this is also like the end of a certain era that they thought was coming. So for now, let's talk about this talk of a reset. Okay. So during an investor's call, David Zaslav said, oh, hang on. I almost read you the wrong thing. See, I'm rusty. See, really, you should be hosting the show here. No, but here it is. Okay. So he says, you look at Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. These are brands that are known everywhere in the world. We have done a reset. We've restructured the business where we are going to focus, where this is going to be a team with a 10-year plan focusing just on DC. We believe we can build a much more sustainable business. He goes on to say, it's very similar to the structure Alan Horn, Bob Iger, and Kevin Feige put together very effectively at Disney. As part of that, we are going to focus on quality. We're not going to release any film before it's ready. DC is something we can make better. So it's funny, I've actually seen a little more expanded quotes than that since then, but that's the core thing. So Brett,
Sure.
When you heard that, what was your gut response, your gut reaction?
My gut reaction was like, all right, cool, because now we've been talking right for years about how, like, does WB have a plan? What the hell are they doing? This is crazy, and we're gonna get into some crazy stuff that also happened recently that I think some people are kind of tying to the old Warner Brothers and their craziness, but it's a different type of craziness and may actually be a good thing. But this reset, I think it's cool because actually here, like, okay, they have an idea now of what they want to do. I'm not 100% sure that just mimicking the Marvel model is the way. I mean, it's the way to go for money, obviously, because Marvel's just printing money. But I just wondered if they were going to really try to differentiate themselves. It seemed like something the old Warner Brothers wanted to do. They didn't want to just copy Marvel, but then they kind of did, but then they didn't. And now these guys are coming in and straight up like, no, we're totally, that's a sustainable business model. It works really good, and we need to mimic that, and we're going to do that. So
yeah,
I'm a little disappointed in the unoriginality of it, but at the same time, I think it's really interesting. It's nice to know that they are going to have a plan and that, they are focusing on quality, as they say, because obviously that's the biggest thing. We want good critical reception to these films that they're putting out. The other thing that I find interesting, though, is it with all these other plans that we know are in the works or are about to happen or have been in the works, now it's like, well, what the fuck's going to happen with all that? Like, which parts of these fit into this 10-year plan? And that's kind of the crazy spot that we're in now. So,
well, that's one of the big bits of news that kind of preceded this, didn't it? Things that don't fit that plan, right? Because the big news was that Batgirl, despite being in post-production, despite being a film with lots of stars involved, right? It was going to be the big, big moment for Leslie Grace to come out as a Spanish Batgirl, Latina Batgirl. She was great in the In the Heights movie, but surrounding her, you had J.K. Simmons, you had Michael Keaton, you had I don't know. There were a few notable names on that.
Brendan Fraser,
Brendan Fraser,
Firefly,
and it seemed like it has a lot going for it, right? And major characters, big, at a time when we're all about the inclusion and the people of color. We have a Latina Batgirl. There was a lot of sort of buzz about it. I remember when like, the like set leak pictures started coming out, and there was like just buzz about this Batgirl film. And here it goes. They filmed it, they get into post, and now they've pulled the plug after some test screenings. And it all seems to be part of this streamlining that David Zaslav has in mind for DC and even in some other facets of their business, right? Because you were telling me before we hit record that, over in the streaming end of things, there's other interesting stuff going on, right, Brett?
Yeah, because it also seems like they seem to be scrapping some of the like planned like Max originals, and they're going to be cutting back on some of that content. So it's also like just curious what they're doing with HBO Max in general. Because actually, I was looking at an infographic recently. I think as far as satisfaction with streaming services, I think HBO Max is towards the top, considering that they are one of the newer ones on the block. And I think part of that was they've had a really strong originals offering, and there's a lot of great content on HBO. HBO, with that name comes a lot of like prestige.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they want to cut back on some of this original stuff now, because it's like then you're just going to be on Netflix, where you're just throwing like a bunch of old shit at the wall and like seeing if we'll pay for it and watch it. You know what I mean? Like, one of the big drivers was, okay, 45 days after theatrical release, we're going to get the movie on there. And I know now that we're going to have all these like tie-in series, which for now seem to be safe, like these Reeves ones that we're going to tie into the Batman seem to be safe.
And James Gunn says that Peacemaker,
James Gunn said he's safe, so it looks like that stuff's not getting messed with. But it's just interesting, like on a bigger, away from the DC side, even just on the HBO streaming side of things, like what's going to happen? Like, what exactly is the drive? Why do I need your service now? Like, what's you built this whole base, with all these things, and now you're gonna like probably stop it. So like,
I don't know. I think it's still gonna be like a main hub, like for DC, for example. HBO Max has the hubs and whatnot.
Right.
I just think that they're trying to make sure that everything they present under that DC banner comes from one coherent place. As opposed to all these new projects kind of existing in their own little things. For example, like let's just talk about this Batgirl movie, okay?
Yeah.
Because if you're the new owners, right? If you're David Zaslav, if you're Warner Brothers Discovery coming in and you're looking at the current state of DC on film, you see that the Batman movie came out and was a nice success for you. But then you hear, oh yeah, and there's a Batgirl film. So that must be related, right? Let me look into that a little bit. Oh, wait, no, it has nothing to do with the Batman. Okay, so I guess it must be related to the Ben Affleck Bat. Oh, no, it's related to the Michael Keaton Batman somehow. But you have the J.K. Simmons.
You have the Gordon from the Batfleck movies.
Yeah, but okay, and then you have her running around in a suit that looks like it was designed for the CW. Like it has to what are we doing here? What are we going for here? You know what I mean? It gets confusing. And then when you look, just DC's been kind of scattershot these last couple of years, and they probably just feel like we need to have everything kind of just focused and streamlined, and everything should be pulling in the same direction. Right now, I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I wouldn't be surprised if Blue Beetle is the next thing that kind of goes away like Batgirl did, because that hasn't even filmed yet. But that's another one that we're like, is that really important right now? At a time when we're trying to get Superman right, at a time when we're trying to get DC back on top, or should we really be expending resources on a Blue Beetle movie for HBO Max? So I feel like
Supergirl might be on the chopping block too. From what I'm understanding as well. So
I read that too.
The optics on that is a little crazy that you axed 2 Latina led projects.
It's not a good look.
And Blue Beetle 2 is actually a Latino led project.
I know. Zolo Mari, whatever. You have the Cobra Kai kid.
You're looking to maybe scrap 3, Latin led Latinx. led projects, which is like,
listen, John Leguizamo's going to have a heart attack. John
yeah, between
Leguizamo,
James Franco,
yeah, between James Franco becoming
Fidel
Fidel
Castro.
Castro and Warner Brothers potentially axing 3 Latino-led superhero films, John Leguizamo's going to have a very busy few weeks here.
It's because the Latins keep winning all the director, Academy Awards in the last couple of years.
Mexican
They're like, we gotta,
yeah.
away.
So, but look, I guess the Batgirl thing to me, look, I feel terrible. I feel terrible for Leslie Grace. I feel terrible for the directors who worked hard on this. We've been reading like heartwarming stories the last few days of top tier directors reaching out to them to extend their support. Even Kevin Feige and Edgar Wright and a few other notable people.
They directed some Miss Marvel episodes actually to the directors.
There you go.
Yeah, so they already have a connection with Marvel too.
Yeah. And Edgar Wright in particular, right? He had that long thing with Ant-Man that he was developing, and then it didn't work out. So I'm happy for them that, Hollywood's kind of coming to their side and all that, because my heart goes out to them. It doesn't sound like it's the movie's fault. I know we've heard a couple of contrasting reports. One thing that said it was irredeemable, which took me back, gave me like deja vu of when they called Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League unwatchable when that got test screened back in the day. But then we've also read reports that that's not true, that it really wasn't about the quality of the movie. It was just the fact that like it doesn't really fit in anywhere, and it doesn't really add anything to what they want the DC brand to be. I feel bad for the people involved. But honestly, I kind of get it. And I for one am glad that there seems to be an adult in the room now kind of trying to go, okay, let's focus our vision here and just, get one team involved to tell one coherent story involving all these different characters. I mean, that's the kind of play, that's where I think they're heading with it. Not that it's necessarily going to be like, everything is completely interlocked in that way, but this idea that there's one core creative team overseeing everything, I think we're going to see some more logic to the things that are announced, and there's going to be some more synergy in these projects, and it's not going to feel so scattershot. Even with things like Titans and Doom Patrol and and they're also consolidating. The Arrowverse is slowly disappearing. They announced that Flash is, next season will be the end of the Flash, and pretty much the Arrowverse as we know it is leaving. And it sounds like Superman and Lois, it will eventually find like a permanent home on HBO Max. Like it seems like overall everything is getting consolidated down, so we could focus on like the core, most important characters, and then kind of, branch outward from there, which if you ask me, they should have done from the beginning. So, to me, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. A little inside baseball too was that apparently, one of the other reasons Batgirl was canceled was that they felt that as far as an HBO Max release, it wasn't really going to make money, so to speak, or I guess bring in subscribers, and they weren't confident enough that, even though I suppose they only had like a $90 million budget, which is like really like small compared to like $70
million.
I mean, actually still bigger, I think, than what Deadpool, the first Deadpool, was made for.
Tim Miller made that for like 66.
So still small compared to like these other, some of the big blockbusters, but they also didn't feel like the return in the theater was going to be there, and they apparently are able to like write the movie off as like a tax expense and like recoup that money. So that was like another thing too. People were saying like, oh, it's because they're cutting costs, so they want to do that. But it's a little bit of all of that. Like a lot of the stuff you said too, just like maybe it doesn't really fit anywhere. And, maybe they didn't feel confident. Like I said, a lot of conflicting reports on that. So supposedly, like in the test screenings, it was scoring in like the 60s from what I understand. But apparently that's not uncommon for an unfinished VFX thing. Apparently they used the example of the first It movie, which, was a big success. And I really liked it a lot. I thought it was really good. Apparently that was scoring in the 60s when they did their unfinished VFX screenings. And look at that, how that turned out. So it's hard to judge, but, but also, again, a lot of voices saying that the movie just really wasn't good, or it just wasn't, but I still wonder. I'm like, well, you only spent $90 million on it. Like, people are excited for the film. You got Keaton back. It's like, why not release it unless you really feel like it's just going to be damaging overall?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Keaton thing because too, like, listen, for the last like year and a half, 2 years, the common knowledge has been that since Ben Affleck is really kind of over, Batman and being involved with DC, that they had come up with like a creative workaround. And that's why they were bringing in Michael Keaton's Batman for The Flash, and that he was going to be signed to a multi-picture deal where he would not only appear in The Flash, he would also appear in Batgirl and possibly like a Batman Beyond type deal. And in general, kind of be like a Nick Fury mentor type, elder statesman, older Bruce Wayne for like a revamped Justice League to be able to turn to from time to time. But this interesting development and the fallout of the Batgirl cancellation now calls into question, if Michael Keaton's Batman really is going to be as much of a focal point as we thought, or if he really is going to be like the mainline Batman after The Flash, which is kind of what we were led to believe. Ben Affleck, went and retired from being Batman. There was a big thing. He went on Jimmy Kimmel and like they put his Batman jersey, they hung it up because, he said he was done doing that. Right. So, it looked like if we're going to have a Batman, we're going to turn to our OG Batman, and Michael Keaton was going to be our big solution. And now, though, we know he's lined up to make his big return to the role in The Flash. But two different things that he's involved in have been scrapped. The first one we've discussed, that's Batgirl. The second thing is apparently he had filmed a cameo of sorts for Aquaman 2. And during test screenings for that, when he'd show up, people would just go, huh? What is he doing here? Like it got really confusing. So then they had to go and get Ben Affleck back. And like, that's going to be the Bruce Wayne who shows up for whatever quick Bruce Wayne Batman snippet has to happen in Aquaman. But like, I bet you that's the same thing that the executives felt when they, they're looking at this and all of a sudden here's Michael Keaton. Huh? What is he doing there? This is what is going on right now. And listen, I'm sure, maybe those test audiences should have been shown The Flash first so that when he shows up on screen, it's not like, what the hell is that old man doing here?
Right.
But it also, I think it is just a weird clash because the Bruce Wayne that we know Jason Momoa to interact with is Ben Affleck. Yeah. So, like I'm saying, if you're the new owners and you're coming in and looking at the stuff, like there's so much confusion with the Affleck and the Keaton and the Battinson and what are the continuities and who knows who and who doesn't know who, I totally get why they'd want to simplify things, but focusing back on our boy Keaton here, it's just interesting to think, right? Because Affleck said he was done, and yet last week Jason Momoa hops on Instagram and posts a picture of the two of them, and there he is looking all slim and sharp in his Bruce Wayne gear, and it's like, are you leaving or not, Ben? Because you keep giving us hope that you might stick around. Remember, I'm one of those people who's like still going to be forever pissed that we didn't get that solo Batfleck movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, just please leave so I can begin the process of fully getting over you. It's just like the ex who just won't just.
I need to heal.
Back. Like, how am I going to heal if you keep coming back when I need you the most?
Yeah, it's so strange, like the timing of like all of it. Because it's like you said, like Keaton was going to show up in Aquaman 2, so now they put Ben Affleck back in, and I wonder if it's because they were like, well, this is now releasing before The Flash, so we need to, like they. Now
true too. It might just be more a logistical thing because
but all that stuff didn't make sense
after Flash.
So it was going to come out after Flash. That was going to be his reintroduction. Then you would think, okay, I'll see him appear in Aquaman. I'll see him appear in Batgirl. But now with the shuffling, now he was going to be revealed earlier before we even got into the whole multiverse stuff. Yeah, now, obviously, he's out of Batgirl because Batgirl's canceled. They removed him from Aquaman 2 and replaced him with Ben Affleck. So now, do we still keep him in the Flash, or does that get edited? Do we cut that? Does that movie come out I mean, is that part of the 10-year plan? I mean, that movie is not something they could do a tax write-off. That's like 200,
No,
300 million
listen,
dollars.
Flash is happening, dude.
And
Flash.
we have the weird Ezra Miller stuff, but it's like, I
Yes.
wonder, do they re-edit that movie and just take the Michael Keaton? Like, how crucial is he to that film? Can they
I
edit it and
think
have a
he's
film
pretty
where he,
crucial. I
yeah,
think he's
so it's
pretty
like,
crucial.
it's just strange,
Yeah.
man.
I feel like if they can tweak anything, it's the finality of Affleck's portion of the movie.
And he's supposed to be in the Flash too.
And
Yeah.
he's
so
in the
it's
Flash
like-
also. Yeah. And it was initially thought of to be treated like as their way of writing him out of the universe. You're writing him out of the story. So maybe, now they can maybe walk back a little bit of the dialogue that maybe makes it sound like he's gone for good. Like, I feel like they could tweak that, but I don't think they could just take Keaton out. I think a lot of the Flash kind of hinges around that Keaton, stuff that happens that's already been shown in the teaser trailer. I don't think they could walk that back at this point. But it is just an interesting thing to think that, like, at some point it seemed like we were going to get a lot of Michael Keaton's Batman. Now, so far, it's just the Flash, and you've got Ben Affleck back as Bruce Wayne filming fresh material, So it's like, do you think there's any possibility, Brett, that this means that, like, the Snyderverse is coming back?
See, that's the thing. Obviously, I see a section of the fandom that thinks like, well, this opens the door. And I even said last week, I think I said it on the podcast, or at least I tweeted it. And I just said, like, never say never. Because at this point, like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, there's a lot of stuff. Like, maybe they say, hey, you know what? We can bring back, the characters from the Snyderverse that we know and continue the stories on from there. And like that already launches us off for the 10-year plan, rather than really doing like a hard reset, reboot with some of the characters that are still around, like, or actors, I should say. I guess that's really what it revolves around, is like, can we get these people back? If we can, then maybe we can use it as a launching point. But I mean, even if Ben Affleck comes back, obviously we keep Gal Gadot, we keep Jason Momoa, we keep Ezra Miller, even though he's kind of they are kind of a little wild right now.
Putting it mildly.
Putting it mildly. Is that truly, quote unquote, the Snyderverse? If Zack Snyder's not back, it's like, it's the character or the actors and their version of the characters from all that. But is it, quote unquote, if it's not the vision that Snyder had, is it still, quote unquote, the Snyderverse? So I don't know. I think people kind of thinking like that opens the door for that. Because the thing is too, is like, what people I never see like taking into account when they're making these tweets. It's like, does Zach want to come back?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, like, if the dude that made the Snyderverse, the Snyder in the verse, like, he put the Snyder in Snyderverse, if he doesn't want to come back and he's kind of done, which, like, I kind of don't blame him. It was a tumultuous time in his life. His daughter had committed suicide. His movies were taken away and butchered. And I'm sure, like, a lot of those meetings were fucking horrible and miserable and stressful. And he's got a huge deal with Netflix now. He's shooting a big movie. He's got a deal to release movies with them. They're all doing pretty well. Like, Army of the Dead did well. He's got this movie, Moon something. Is it like Moon something? Moonshot? Moonrise? I don't know what the hell it is.
Sure.
He's got something coming out. Everyone's real psyched for it. It's like a sci-fi movie. So I just don't know. Like, the Snyderverse come back. Snyderverse, is Zach coming back? I don't know. I don't know if this guy wants to come back. And so it's strange. But no, I mean, my opinion, I don't think all those like old plans for the Snyderverse and that 5-part Justice League movie, I do not see that coming back. Could they, since they're already keeping Momoa and Gal Gadot though, there's no reason why, if Ben Affleck wants to come back on, they can't keep him on too and build out from there and just get some new creative talent and have a Kevin Feige in there. Now it's a different story, but it's not quite the Snyderverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, listen, I'm with you. I mainly asked you that in jest. I don't think that Warner Brothers Discovery is coming in thinking, I know what the solution is for the future.
Yeah.
Let's
I don't
go
think
back
that was the
to
thing.
like the original sort of blueprint that got us here to begin with. You know, like,
Yeah, I really don't do that.
I've seen some of the people out there who are holding out hope, who are feeling like, oh, well, they're going to make a new plan and they brought back Affleck. So maybe they're going to try to, reignite some of the Snyderverse plans and yada, yada, yada. Listen, I feel the need to kind of give a brief history lesson on how we got here to begin with, because to me, this whole thing is just the latest twist in a story that's been ongoing and now for going like 8 years practically. All right. Because if you go back several years, right? Zack Snyder began his tenure in 2013 with Man of Steel, when that was considered a moderate hit. And yes, it was only considered a moderate hit. They decided to move forward with the sequel, and they went with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And then Greg Silverman has since come out in the years following that to kind of be the executive who takes the blame, so to speak, for asking Snyder to make the kind of movies that he made. He apparently wanted to do something that was darker and more like poetic and grandiose and kind of like a counter program to what Marvel was doing at the time. So he wanted them to go towards what BVS was and what Zack Snyder's Justice League was going to be. But I guess he was like not powerful enough, or his opinion wasn't shared by the rest of the WB brass, because after he asked Snyder to make those kind of movies and approved of the scripts that Snyder and Terrio and everyone kind of worked on, by the time we got to the test screening phase of things, the studio got total cold feet on that entire creative approach, and then the rest is history, right? They cut a half hour off BVS. They immediately ordered rewrites of Justice League. They hired Jeff Johns and John Berg to babysit Zack Snyder as he filmed Justice League, with daily rewrites and all kinds of insanity going on. And then they brought in Joss Whedon to basically remake the entire freaking movie again. And then that set up a bunch of things that didn't happen, right? Because Justice League it set up the Legion of Doom at the end. It set up more Justice League movies. It's 7 chairs with room for more at the table there at the Hall of Justice, right? And at the time, they're setting up Legion of Doom and Justice League 2 and 3. That went absolutely nowhere. And then now suddenly they started going into this idea of, okay, now instead of everything being interconnected, now we're going to do the worlds of DC, where everyone is kind of on their own little world, and we're going to move the characters outward, and they'll have their own spin-offs and sequels, but not be so dependent on one another. You'll have Aquaman 1 and 2, but you'll also have the Deep or whatever, that's like it's set within that world. And you'll have, a Superman thing that's related to its own thing and a Krypton spin-off to go with it. And you'll have, the idea was we're not going to have all these movies be so interlocked anymore. We're going to just branch everything out. We're no longer going to try to do the big cinematic universe like Marvel's doing, which is what we had sort of been doing for the last couple years. So now all of a sudden that was the plan. Now we're no longer doing interlock movies. Now we're moving everything outward. But now over the course of the last few years, the results on all of that have been very, very hit or miss. For every Aquaman that gives you $1 billion, for every Joker that gives you $1 billion, you get a Birds of Prey that gives you 55 cents. And you have a Shazam that is very, very well liked, but only does okay. Because right now people don't have that brand loyalty for DC yet, and they don't have that guaranteed sense of, well, it's a DC movie, so if I go, I'm going to have a good time. That's what they have with other brands. There's no consumer confidence in them, and that's why now you look across at everything that's had to happen since. Again, this is all in reaction to what happened in 2016 and 2017 when they greenlit BVS and Suicide Squad and Justice League, and then decided before they released those 3 movies that they didn't like any of them enough to release them the way they were. So, and all of this came from the decision to give Zack Snyder more creative control after Man of Steel was only a moderate hit.
Right.
So again, the decision to double down on the Snyder vision in 2013 and continue to double down, because not only did they announce BVS, but then at a certain point they delayed BVS to now flesh it out even more and add the other Justice League characters and use it as a launch pad for the entire DC cinematic universe. That happened during pre-production for BVS. So they doubled and tripled down on Snyder. And then before the first movie could come out from this new plan, they hamstrung him. I mean, it's just, I've discussed a lot of this ad nauseum, but it all connects to this, like, we're still feeling the fallout from those decisions. We're
Yeah.
still like, here we are in 2022, still looking at a studio trying to figure out how do we make the most of this, because on some level they're still licking their wounds from 6 years ago. It's like, it's crazy that we've been watching this all unfold in live action right before our eyes.
Yeah.
And now here's just the latest permutation. Here's the latest sort of, twist on things. But no, just to kind of put that idea to rest. No, I think the Snyderverse is the last thing on their mind. I think if they brought Ben Affleck back, it's because right now it's for the sake of consistency. It's for the sake of right now, until otherwise is, until we state otherwise, this is the mainline Batman, because he's the one who knows Aquaman. He's the one who's interacted with Wonder Woman. He's the one who found this Barry Allen Flash the first time around. So I think it's just a matter of being consistent. It's not their way of going, we want the Snyder creative back. It's just right now, Ben Affleck, until he's bowed out of the role officially on screen and not on a late night talk show, he's still our Batman. So we got to have him there. But I don't think that this has anything to do with the Snyderverse. But also, now let's just talk about the very idea of rebooting the reboot, because look, this is a total kind of, Deadline did a whole great report on this about how what Zaslav's doing is really just an abject rejection of what Jason Kilar had in mind, which was really just an extension of Walter Hamada had in mind, which was that idea of like kind of giving all the characters their own space to kind of breathe and kind of moving everything apart and not having everything come out of one central nucleus. So now we're moving back towards the one central nucleus.
Right.
And it's interesting because, like, I know for one, our buddy over there, I know Mr. Batman on film, Bill Raimi's probably pissed at this. And I want to have him on the show soon to rant about it, because one of the things he was super excited about was that everything was going to be separate again, and that everything would just be like, I can get good Batman movies, I could watch good Wonder Woman movies, I could watch good, I don't need to have all of these things be interlocked in order to enjoy them. And now it sounds like, nope, we're going back to the idea of there's one core team. So that all this stuff is going to be with the idea of getting crossovers and big event films in mind. And that was the thing that Deadline brought into the mix that I think is important to note here. That he kind of, Deadline kind of puts it like he viewed Kilar's approach as too kind of like small ball. It's a bunch of little, moderately successful DC things happening at once. He wants DC to build to major like event films. He wants, he wants it to be just like on a grander scale. He wants to have the tentpole DC characters, the mainline faces of the brand, carrying the brand forward and working from there. You know what I mean? As opposed to just having a bunch of moderate successes. So it's crazy to see how much has changed, how much has stayed the same, how much we've reverted back to an old plan. But now what's old is new, but this time it actually sounds pretty good. I don't know. And now the question becomes, do they find like the one central person like we've discussed? Right now, all he talked about is there will be a dedicated team. He didn't say that there would be a dedicated person, So I just wonder, like, is this going to be like a committee type deal? Or is there going to be an adult at the table who goes, all right, this is the direction we're going in and we all got to work together. Right. Because that's going to be interesting to see too. And like, I'm adding another topic right here. Because what does this mean because someone who doesn't have a lot of say right now is Mr. Walter Hamada. Because he's currently the DC Films president. And wouldn't you know it, there are reports that he almost quit over this Batgirl news.
Right.
It sounds like he basically had no say in it. Let me repeat. DC Films president Walter Hamada had no way to protect Batgirl. He couldn't save this thing. He pretty much just found out about it the way we did. So Remember a few months back, there was a lot of talk about, what is the balance of power? Is Walter Hamada going to stay on with the new regime, and what's going to happen? Well, this looks like Walter Hamada is slowly kind of becoming a futile force over
Yeah.
there at DC Films. If Batgirl, a film that he greenlit, a film that he helped produce that has his name on it, could get cut, and he can't do squat about it.
Yeah.
So that answers a lot of questions about Walter Hamada too. But what do you think at this stage of the game, Brett? Like, do you want them to have that one guy, or are you willing to try to treat it like a writer's room type of deal? Kind of like the Star Wars end. Like in Star Wars, there isn't necessarily that central architect. Kathleen Kennedy is there, but you don't get the sense there's one person. There's a few. You got Favreau.
It's Filoni, Favreau,
there's a little nucleus of creative people. So what are you thinking? Are you liking the idea of having like the main guy, or having a team work on these things?
I mean, I'm always I'm of two minds, right? Like I don't like the too many cooks in the kitchen or too many hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. But to just have it like one guy and it's all like his. Because I mean, listen, even think Kevin Feige, he's the face of it, but I don't think it's all just him. He definitely has a couple of people in his ear with him. You know what I mean?
He's got some writers he turns to a lot too, like the last names Marcus and McFeely. That duo, I think they did like all 3 Captain America movies and like 2 of the Avengers movies. They have some writers that they've leaned on a lot. I mean, he has some writers that he's leaned on a lot to flesh out his world. So yeah, maybe something just along those lines. Just, you have a few steady writers who work across several projects, just so that there's like a consistency of vision and tone.
Yeah, I think a small team is nice. And then you just get a couple of, right, it's always good to bounce ideas off each other, have a couple different ideas, a couple different people who could oversee things, or that you can kind of like pitch off to watch over certain projects and stuff like that, rather than just being everything on one guy's shoulders. And if we hate that one guy's interpretation of everything, then, that's that. So I mean, listen, whether you agree like copying, quote unquote, copying Marvel is a good idea or not, is I don't know. I mean, I was liking when they were doing the worlds of DC, and it was going to be these little pocket universes, a little more detached. But at the same time, like, there's no denying that when you have because everything is connected at Marvel, there are shows that I honestly probably would never watch if they were just released or in their own little bubble. But because
that's my thing too,
it's going to tie in. Listen, Miss Marvel was not on my radar, but then I heard some crazy stuff happened in it, or was said in it. I don't want to spoil it. I don't know if you saw it or anything like that.
No.
So I think I've spoiled it in previous episodes, but I won't do it on this one.
Yeah.
But there was some stuff, and I was like, well, shit, now I have to watch it. And guess what?
Yeah.
Like, getting my eyes on that, that's cha-ching, cha-ching. That's like, they've won the time battle of my time going to Disney Plus to do that. So I get from a business standpoint why they want it. So again, you could agree with it, you could hate it, but that's what they're gonna do. And I think just like overall, it'll probably be a good thing. Overall, it will probably be a good thing to have. Listen, everything that we've seen the last like decade hasn't worked. So I mean, maybe this is the right change, and the right people are.
It's been like feast or famine, right? We're either eating amazingly well, or we're eating what the hell just happened here? Yeah. Yeah, for me, when it comes to all this, I feel like, on the one hand, I feel like it's about time. I really do feel like this is long overdue. I know that through all these permutations over the years, the idea of having the pocket universes and moving everyone onto their own thing, I understood why they wanted to do that. But deep down, I've always seen the value in having everyone exist and coexist, or at least having it be from like one coherent vision, because like you said, it draws people to characters and properties that they would never normally watch, and it builds like a brand loyalty where like now Marvel is just a part of certain people's like lifestyle now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there are certain people who've grown up where they've been watching Marvel movies their whole lives, and they've checked out the Marvel, the spin-off TV series that now attached to it. It's a whole thing. And then you look at DC, and like I brought up earlier, you might love Titans, but Titans, that the Batman there has nothing to do with anything happening there. And you might like Doom Patrol, but those characters and that cyborg has nothing to do with the cyborg that you've met here. Like everything being completely on its own. Same thing, and the Arrowverse is on its own. I just feel like if I'm an outsider looking in at this business, and now I'm buying this business, I would want coherency. I would want that unified vision. So I'm very, very happy that this is happening.
Yeah.
And especially because I'm just going to go back to the beginning of that quote. You look at Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. These are brands that are known everywhere in the world. Like this is Zaslav. Once again, he's coming in. He's saying these are, we have tentpole mainline characters here. What are we doing? Pushing them to the side to get a Supergirl movie greenlit real fast and to try to make a Batgirl movie that isn't related to our hit Batman series. Like what are we, what is the point of all these things if they're not all working together to, towards the same end,
right?
So yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty damn excited. I want to see, it sounds like they're very confident about the slate that's coming. I have a quote here also from that. He says, first of all, just further stuff that David Zaslav said about the quality over quantity. He said, we're not going to release a film to make a quarter. We're not going to release a film unless the focus is going to be how do we make each of these films in general as good as possible. And then he touted what's to come. And you mentioned the Flash, like what's going to happen with the Flash, right? And he said it as of last week in this investors call. He says, we have some great DC films coming up, Black Adam, Shazam, and Flash. And we're working on all of those. We're very excited about them. So he's still publicly mentioning Flash in the same breath as the other stuff that's coming.
So that one's safe, I guess. Yeah.
And we keep hearing that even in all the reports about Ezra Miller's outlandish behavior of late and really worrisome stuff going on, and not that it's as important as this person's health and them not hurting anybody, but the silver lining is that apparently the Flash movie is like being loved by test audiences. The buzz on the movie is that, whoa, this is going to do it. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for. This is a great DC movie that's going to rejigger the timeline, reset our heroes, and give us a place to go to next. So as long as that's still the case, they're going to do whatever they can, but they're going to release this damn thing, and the fact that Zaslav, as of a few days ago, is still mentioning it there in the same breath as Shazam and Black Adam tells me we don't have to worry about that. Cause I was looking for that. I'm like, I wonder if he's just going to just downplay that.
Yeah. Like gloss over it.
Yeah. Just just focus on Shazam and Black Adam, cause those are coming out this year. And why even bother talking about Flash, but he's still talking about Flash. So I think for now that whole situation remains safe. But now, as I'm thinking about this, right, and I'm trying to creatively problem solve, something that dawns on me that I wonder if they would push for, if you're David Zaslav and you're looking at the Flash and you're worried about this idea of having Michael Keaton back as the mainline Batman and all this kind of stuff seems kind of hokey and strange to you. I don't know. Could you see them going to Andy Muschietti and saying, I want you to add a scene or a sequence that it actually involves Pattinson, involves the Robert Pattinson Batman, just to kind of show that yes, all of this stuff is together. That Batman is not, and maybe make it so that he is the Batman moving forward. We see the old school Michael Keaton one almost for nostalgia, for the same way we saw Tobey Maguire in Far From Home, but he's not really sticking around. And we see Ben Affleck's Batman, but that's the Andrew Garfield one, another one where he's not really sticking around, but they could add a thing where the Pattinson one shows up. Because really, in theory, they should want to have all of this stuff work together. And I know that hurts people's souls because Matt Reeves created this beautiful world but like, you got to think they want these characters to not be completely segregated from one another.
Right.
So, like, how would you feel if through some weird multiverse loophole, they're able to make the Pattinson thing work with the Ezra Miller Flash and all that stuff? Like, would that be okay for you? Or would that be like ridiculous?
Yeah, well, because the thing is, obviously, I loved the Batman, and I love the world that Reeves created, and that we're going to see expanded. As of right now, the Penguin series seems to be safe, and I forgot whatever happened with everything just morphed into the Penguin series, right? Or is there still a Gotham PD series, or that's all?
I think the Gotham PD became the Penguin.
Yeah, was there a second one though, or am I making that up? It's really just that one now. Anyway,
I think, it's something.
Yeah, maybe it is. So, I mean, I'm happy to see that expanded on there, and I love that world. But it just, the thing is, like, yeah, I could see them wanting to, I guess, like maybe loop Pattinson in that, but tonally, I feel like the Reeves universe or movie doesn't really fit with the Batfleck, Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman universe that is, the remnants of the Snyderverse, we'll call it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think tonally they fit. So it's not like that I'm like 100% against it, but I feel like you need to like reset the tone and what this 10-year plan is going to be first before you start doing that. Like, I feel like there needs to be something like to just start like jamming them in there now. And I'm curious too, like how much pull does Reeves have? Can WB just go at him and be like, listen, man, you got to make this work in the thing. And does he have to listen, or does he just back out and say, fuck this, I'm not doing it?
That's the thing too that we were discussing off air right before we recorded. Like, I don't even know if his creative, freedom clause or whatever it is that he had negotiated back in 2017 when he bailed on negotiations, and then they said, fine, we'll let you do it however you want. Like, does that even still work anymore? Like,
does that fit with Zaslav's like view?
Yeah, like whatever creative freedom. Remember, like it wasn't even Hamada and Emmerich who gave him that freedom. It was Johns and Berg and that woman's
and something
Sarnoff. Yes,
and Sarnoff. Yeah.
So it was Sarnoff, Berg, and Johns who told Reeves, "Yes, make your Batman movie your way. It doesn't have to fit in with the rest of the universe." But since then, that guard became Hamada and Emmerich, and now it's Zaslav and his team for this 10-year plan. So I'm like, as we've gone through these, regime changes, does Reeves' creative freedom, survive through that? Right. I don't know. And if he's signed to a 3-picture deal at this point, like if they do mess with him, does that mean he can walk? Because, well, now you went back on the thing. Like this is where I would love to find like an entertainment lawyer who could like help explain that, to be like, listen, if it says in the contract, if there's verbiage that says you could do whatever you want, but then another company buys the company and says, we don't really want to do it that way anymore, do they still have to honor that verbiage? It's going to be interesting to see, because I've always said there's no way that anyone likes having a Batman that is completely separate of everything else. He's considered one of the holy grail characters. And in theory, now all the rest will get to interact. We have Shazam and Black Adam, and there's rumors of them being involved in the Flash. So it basically makes it seem like every other DC character coexists except Matt Reeves and his little dark Batman off in the corner. I could see someone at Warner Brothers Discovery going, all right, that's ridiculous, we got to fix that.
Yeah, and a long time ago, I mean, we had brought this up, or I had brought it up again, and I'll bring it up again now. Like, maybe if the plan is, I mean, it is the plan now, right? We're having this 10-year interconnected thing. Everyone's connected except for Reeves. Well, and we should throw in it looks like the sequel for the Joker is still moving forward. Lady Gaga even tweeted some stuff, so she's officially definitely
happening. Yeah,
because I don't think that was like official. That was like a pretty strong report, but like she straight up tweeted like a teaser thing. So if that's happening, like maybe we bring that DC Black Label tag because then
Yes.
the Reeves thing could be DC Black Label. We could still have Joker in its sequel as a DC Black Label thing, and that would help for the consumer, for us, for the fans, to
Yeah.
differentiate what's connected and what's not. So like this is the DCEU, or if we're still going to
Yeah.
call it the fucking DCEU, which is stupid. Like if we're still going to call it that, like and that's Aquaman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Shazam, Black Adam, Batfleck,
Superman. Yeah.
Superman, and that's going to be that thing. And then you still allow these little pocket universes, but as long as they're, I don't think there's anything wrong with having these isolated things that are not in the mix, as long as you label them properly. And you and I think if you make some kind of marketing arm of it and just say this is like the DC Black Label, maybe you spin it out as its own little like studio, and they do smaller projects that are independent of this continuity. I think that plan still works. I mean, I don't know like how far the money goes, you know, where you're stretching that out to like now fund this whole other arm of productions. But I think that's what I would do is like, you know, and they're doing it, but they don't have that separate label of it. It doesn't have a little home, a little hut to live under, you know, and that's, if they did that, I think that's a way to have your cake and eat it too.
I agree. And it is notable that all this Joker stuff seems to be kind of happening and moving forward and getting a release date, even with Warner Brothers Discovery coming in and kind of streamlining everything DC.
Yeah. Well, because it made the first one made $1 billion.
It made $1 billion. Yeah. And by the way, and I'm sure that they're going to make sure that they actually like make money on this one, because I heard that Joker, the way it worked out, Warner Brothers apparently saw very little of that money. Apparently, I have to look it up. There's a whole, I've had it explained to me before by people who understand movie finances better than I do. But apparently,
I think I read about this. Yeah,
they had like offset a lot of the costs by like having international backers, I think. So the international backers got most of the money. Like there's some other thing like that.
Yeah, I heard Phillips had to get like funding from somewhere else. They didn't get
Yeah.
all the funding from Warner, and then they put it back to Warner or something, because Warner, I think, didn't want to do it. They didn't want to have that much.
So here they are with their second DC movie to ever make $1 billion, and apparently they didn't get much of any of that. So for Joker 2, they're gonna like dot those I's and cross those T's and make sure that this one actually, you know, the windfall comes to Burbank.
And you know what's funny is that, like, okay, so Batman is obviously Reeves's universe is kind of at this point right now, it's separate. Okay. And then the Joker is also a totally separate thing, not living continuity. But the even greater thing is that the Joker is a character from the Batman series. And even those two things are not even connected. Like, those don't even fucking go together. So it is wild. But
and then there was going to be a Batgirl movie from a third different
that was like that is like half in the old Snyderverse mythos and like half in its verse in the Burtonverse. So like, yeah, it really is fucking.
I'm telling you, that's why I'm like, you know, I know some people are major bummed about this Batgirl cancellation, but I'm like, honestly, that was always just gonna be like a what the hell are we doing here? Unless it was like just jaw-droppingly great. What?
They have Marvel's What If, and they have DC's What the Hell Are You Doing Here?
What the hell are we doing here?
I want that series. DC's What the Hell Are We Doing Here?
You get Jeffrey Wright and narrate that one too, you know.
And you just get like all these random stories that are fucking a mishmash of every fucking iteration they've ever had.
Yeah, George Miller's Justice League Mortal gets an episode.
Yeah.
I mean, you may as well.
DC's What the hell are we doing here?
That's what it's become the last
year. I think I need to make a call to Mr. Zaslav because I think you and I just fucking cracked everything. You do a DC Black Label, DC's What the Hell Are We Doing Here? And then you just have your weird
I mean, we went through it. Let's just recap one last time, okay? It was a Batgirl movie that has a black-ish looking Batgirl, but is not Jeffrey Wright's daughter from the Batman, that Commissioner Gordon. No. Her Commissioner Gordon is J.K. Simmons, but her Batman that she interacts with is Michael Keaton. Like, What can you imagine, like, explaining that to someone who just doesn't follow this stuff that
Yeah,
closely and is like, what is going on?
yeah,
So it was always just a big confusing mess.
yeah,
But Batgirl, rest in peace.
yeah.
Um,
Sad.
but yeah, so I don't know. Did we leave any stone unturned on this topic, Brett? Was there something else that you were
There,
hoping?
yeah, there's just like it's like a small little like thing, but
Yeah,
just because I've seen, well, at least when the news first broke, and then there was like less extra quotes and stuff, but
yeah,
people were going, "What the hell is wrong over at Warner Brothers? They're, they have no plan. They're crazy. They make no sense." And I did want to break that down a little bit because,
sure.
again, for the people that don't follow this stuff like insanely like we
Yeah,
do, like it's easy to look at all the crazy shit that happened with Batman vs Superman, the Justice League, that's been very public, and how all that shit got, we've talked about it
yeah,
today, how everything hit the fan with that, and then connect this thing to as a continuation of that turmoil. And it seems very tumultuous because we're looking at them canceling a already shot and finished film.
yeah,
But I want to make it clear to everybody that while this also seems crazy and it's easy to tie to that, there's been an entire regime change. So while this seems absolutely insane, it's actually not.
yeah.
In a way, it's not connected to that turmoil, and it's not because DC and WB don't know what the hell they're doing now. It's because they have a plan, and they want to make sure that that plan is executed the way that they figured it out, the way they figured it
And
out to be
yeah,
executed. So I want to just point that out because I think a lot of people are just going, "Oh my God, they still have no plan. They still have no idea." No, they didn't cancel Batgirl because they didn't have a plan. They're canceling Batgirl because they do have a plan now.
because
And
they
listen,
actually do. Yeah,
I can talk about
it's
this
the
till I'm blue in
opposite.
the face until we see the results of this plan, but they
I
have a
know.
plan now. So,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not,
Well, I think it's
strap
funny
in.
for long-time listeners of this podcast. You can go back to like episodes like, 20, 30, 40, where I'm talking about they've got a plan. I swear they're working on something there,
We
man.
all
You're
said
gonna
that for how
love it.
long? They
Yeah, it's
finally have a
like,
plan.
we've been hoping that they have a plan. Now it sounds like they have a plan. And
Yeah.
to piggyback on what you said though, too, it's like there hasn't even been just one regime change. There have been multiple because Warner Brothers went from Warner Brothers to Warner Media. Remember, that was the first thing where it was
That's
Warner
right.
Brothers and AT&T, and that's what brought in Jason Kilar and all that sort of stuff. And then the Warner Media thing got bought out by Discovery. So now here is our next regime change. So that's the other thing too, where it's like it keeps changing, but
And then the
on top,
regime at DC is constantly has
and
been
then
changing as
yes,
well.
everything's been in flux.
Yeah.
But
And
what
as we've
should be
seen,
noted?
yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say, as we've seen from their investor call too, it looks like they are calling DC its own studio now. I don't know if you saw
Yes.
that little tidbit, but the way they listed it, it is actually like a branch in its own studio. So it's
Yeah.
basically like Marvel Studios. We now have basically DC Studios.
Which
So
finally,
yeah, still
honestly,
shaking up.
yes. Yum, 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 yum. Give me that. That sounds
Yeah,
delicious. Yes, I want a team of dedicated DC people working on my DC stuff and not just a bunch of satellite groups making random things with fan-made looking costumes.
right.
Um, but there was one other thing about this that I have completely lost now. See, I'm a little rusty. I haven't
I
podcasted in a
I killed
month.
you. It's because I cut you off.
No, I lost it. But yeah, well, I guess that's just gone forever. We'll have to remember that one for episode 160 of the Fanboy Podcast. But yeah, I guess I really don't have anything else for this. So, Brett, do you have anything else that you'd like to say to the people? Oh, how do you like that? You
There
like
it
me
is.
wrapping up the show and then remembering it? Yes.
That's always how it
So,
happens.
in terms of the money spent, similar to what happened with Warner Media and Zack Snyder's Justice League, it is important to note that when Warner Media spent the $70 million on Zack Snyder's Justice League that they spent to finish it, those were the first dollars they'd ever spent on the film, right? And
Right.
similar here with Warner Brothers Discovery, it's easy for them to axe certain things and cancel certain stuff because that was all done with other people's money before they were in charge.
Right.
you know. So it's not like it's their money that went to that they've thrown down the drain for no good reason. That was Warner Media's expenditures, and they're like, yeah, that was a stupid thing, but we're in charge now, so we're not doing that stupid thing anymore.
Right.
You know, but it's important to note that too, that as these mergers happen, you know, the new entity isn't really on the hook for what the old entity did, you know.
Right.
So Warner Brothers Discovery is coming in and basically trying to, like, you know, start with a fresh slate, spend some fresh money on things that are actually going to help grow this brand and get that consumer confidence back, and create a thing here for DC where, you know, everyone just assumes greatness when they see that DC logo.
Right.
And right now, aside from people like us who still think that could happen, when we, you know, it warms my heart when I see the DC logo. By and large, you know, in pop culture terms, you know, DC ain't doing so hot compared to the our other esteemed competition. So we're gonna take a page or two out of their book, but hopefully we kick their asses at it too. That's how I think. That is the wrestling fan in me. I get all like tribal sometimes, and I want my group to beat your group. Because listen, I love me some Marvel. I love me the Avengers, but DC's my first love. DC's my heart. So if they could build to a Justice League film that at some point has the pomp and circumstance and epic build of like an Avengers Infinity War or Endgame, that to me is the epitome, and that is what this is all for. We should be pulling in the direction of the most jaw-dropping Justice League movie that's ever happened, as opposed to the one that came into theaters and I forgot by the time the credits rolled. You know, as opposed to this limbo where there's no really huge event film to look forward to. And now we've got this Flash one that looks like it's going to be that big sort of almost, because of the amount of characters on it. You could say it's almost like a Justice League light, kind of like Captain America Civil War was like an unofficial Avengers. So we've got this Flash event film that Ezra Miller keeps threatening to take away from us. But like, you know, I want to be a fan who lives in a landscape where I know that there's big epic DC shit coming around the corner. And I think having a dedicated team working on a 10-year plan is the way we get there. We don't get it by having just a bunch of random filmmakers following their muse and doing their own riff on a character. So to me, this is all good news. And it's all even better news to me that we got together this week and recorded episode 159 of the Fanboy Podcast. Listen, folks, if you want to have questions or comments or anything dealt with here on the show, you could send it over to the Fanboy Podcast at gmail.com. You can also follow our Twitter account at the Fanboy Show and tweet us over there. This we've actually got a couple of our inbox has lit up a little bit there, Brett.
Yeah, I've been doing questions as much as I could over the last couple of weeks. There was a few I saved because they were Superman adjacent, and I want you to weigh in because you're going to speak to it a little more completely than I can. So I apologize, listeners, not this week, just because we're already over an hour. We just got back together.
We wanted to focus all this on the 10-year plan and the reset thing.
But next week we'll do a whole bunch of listener questions.
For sure. Keep them coming. Thanks for your support. Thanks for listening. Thanks for writing reviews and subscribing and telling all your friends that you know of the coolest fanboy podcast around. And it is the Fanboy Podcast. So, folks, until next week, life is chaos. No, what is it again?
I think we just got rid of the life is chaos.
That's
right. You just do the be kind.
Oh, that's right. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Until next week, be kind
and stay fanboy.
Adios.
So long.